the Valley folk doesn't do any of that bullshit.
Exactly.
And the Valley folk is comprised of people who worked in the beginnings of this industry, just like you did in the maker days. And we learned quite a few things about how to and how not to treat your employees. And we have done our best to not do that. And being like a supervisor, a boss, a CFO, whatever the fuck I am in the Valley folk has really taught me how absolutely it's hard to be a boss and absolutely it's hard to run a business. But
you have sympathy for the people on that side.
I have such sympathy for people on that side. I was in the trenches with you guys when I first started out, and it was a lot of work, but if I was good at my job and I did good work and I made good shit, then I felt like I deserved the things that I deserved, and I deserved to at least survive in this fucking town if I was going to be making someone else's wallet fat, essentially.
Right.
And
but even that concept, I didn't even get that.
I mean, it took me a while. It certainly took me a while. It
but
wasn't an instant
the difference
thing.
is you being in front of the camera, you are not cuttable. You're not an expendable.
I mean, but I didn't believe that for a long time. I didn't get that for a while. I didn't feel that for a while. Because, look, I felt like I lucked into every position I ever landed in my life. Including the Sony Pictures job that I got from literally winning a contest. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. Like, I got to luckily work in an industry with all of these amazing, highly educated people. And here I am doing wacky shit and somehow making it through. And it wasn't until the SourceFed days, deeper into the SourceFed days, I don't know exactly when. I could probably figure it out, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But one day I realized that I made a lot of people happy, and I made a channel very popular along with other people. Obviously, it wasn't just me. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not living comfortably. I'm not happy with what I'm not happy when I come home from work. What do I need to do to fix that? And I realized that I was worth more, and I fought for myself. And then I got to a point where like it worked for me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to settle for anything else. It took a long time. And I'm an older guy. I'm like the oldest of a lot of crews I've been a part of. And, it took me a long fucking time. But I did my best to pass along that information to the younger people that were coming into the industry. And I did my best to help my friends because they don't teach you this shit.
Right.
They just fucking don't. But you struggled through this shit for so long, and you still do, I think. And unfortunately, but
I think the way that I look at that, and I think it's a good thing, and I don't know why I feel compelled to say this, is I'm so clear, strong, good, absolutely solid in all the other categories of my life. I mean, everything fluctuates, but generally speaking, I'm quite set and good. It's just this one area that has been my main struggle area my whole life. And I think a lot of people have that one area that's their more difficult area that they struggle with most, that inevitably is also the area that teaches you the most lessons, that you see the most growth in because you have so much low, you get so much high. Like, certainly this is that area for me. So I don't think of it as this like dark spot in my life, but I do always think of it when I'm wanting to like grow and shift, and I do have a lot of struggles still in this area. Yeah.
And as do I, and I think as do a lot of people in our peer group that all do this shit. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of work to get to a place where you eventually feel comfortable, and a lot of people don't even get there. Yeah. And I feel very fortunate to be comfortable, but I also feel like I earned it, and I feel like I learned a lot from people who struggled also.
Yeah.
And you just listen to those people, just listen to those people, and they got a lot to say. And also, like, I used to give people this piece of information, of advice too, when they were feeling like things weren't fair and it sucked that this such and such person was being treated this way and I wasn't being treated this. And once you get into like the real nasty stuff of like a group team environment, I used to tell people to play the game, to just play the game a little bit better or more or at all. And by that I mean make compromise a lot, and understand that it's not all about you, and there's a lot of other people that are all trying to survive.
But I think it's not just that, because in your initial comment, I'd say I'm in that category, because one thing that did not work in my favor in all this stuff is I've always been really rebellious by nature, because I've been...
That's a big problem.
But let me explain to you why it's different than the second half of what you said. I've been rebellious by nature because I've always been I'm one of those people who's been really like an activist, like really driven by making sure everything is equal and good and everyone gets their due credit, etc. Like that's always been first and foremost to me. And I'm not somebody who puts myself above anyone else. I give myself equal credit that I deserve to anyone else who deserves whatever. If somebody did more than me, I'm the person in class who's like, you know what, teacher, this person did more than me on this. That's great. Like I've been the one there's something deep inside of me. I think there are certain personality types like this that I am just beyond driven in that way. And I'm really a group-centered person mentally in that way as well. So when I was working at companies like that, I would always have the end result, the end product in mind. Like if our purpose here is to make this and this video, to do these things, to make people happy or to educate in this way or whatever the purpose is, like if our purpose is this, that's what all of us should be aiming towards. So when I say I was rebellious against, unfortunately, what happens in like business situations is a lot of people don't have that end result in mind. They make choices based on selfishly, like, well, this will make me look better and make everyone else look bad, which will make me look better, or this will get me more money in the long run, or I'm going to kind of lie to this client in this way for this thing to realize. And I'm also really observant and clever. Like I just am the one who picks up all the little information everywhere. I could be a big gossip, but I usually keep it to myself in a respectful
Everybody's
way.
A little bit of a gossip.
Sure. But so I was also the person who could see through all the things that were going on, and I would just get this is where the rebellion came in. If decisions were being made that were not in favor of the goal, like the end product, the reason we were all there, it really was hard for me to play the game along with people like that. Like when I felt like
you saw the ship being steered in the wrong direction.
Well, like if the ship is being steered toward the iceberg because it's going to give us like iceberg insurance money, it was really hard for me to get on board and just go with it, because I could always see that it was happening, and not that it happens on every shoot. And I always carry a good amount of understanding that...
I think there's
Sure. I always carry a good amount of understanding that the people who are above me making bigger decisions than I am know a lot more than I do, and there are reasons they're making these decisions, and they're certainly not all bad or bad-hearted decisions. I'm very aware of that because I've learned that lesson, and I never step on the toes of people who have a position above mine, because I know they know things that I don't know that would change the way I see this. However, it becomes really hard. It's like you need to be able to guide your group well as a good leader. You need to be able to explain enough of a reason why to get people's hearts and souls behind doing what they're doing. And instead, there were just constantly these feelings of stuff that in hindsight, I know a lot of it was just poor decision making. And it's so sad when you're like, I can't be strategic when I know it's going to be a detriment to the project or the people involved in the project. I'm standing up for my fellow man, and I can't have that.
I think the best way to navigate that is, because especially if it's an authority figure, the best way to navigate that is like, okay, well, if I personally have no control over us hitting that iceberg in about 2 days, because our heading is heading straight for an iceberg, then how do I keep the most people safe?
Yeah, which is what I did.
So
I mean, it's not like I fought against the iceberg every time. I just always had internal struggle because I always experienced what was going on, and just I would hate that I had to just sit and do this thing. But there's a difference.
There's a difference between deciding that you want to keep as many people safe as possible while this ship is heading towards an iceberg, but also like being kind of a dick about it, like in the sense that like you're being like really antagonistic against the person making that ultimate decision and then being the one that's like the angry, like talk backy, like
that's a way to get fired. That's a way for someone to want to fire you.
Or it's just one way to like be rebellious, which is not only do I hate that our ship is heading towards an iceberg, I'm going to be a piece of shit to the person that made that decision because there's nothing else I can do, but I'm still going to keep everybody safe. And there's a difference between that and playing the game, which is still being a supportive team player, and even though you know it's a bad decision from your supervisor or the authority figure, you still put an amount of trust in them that
they know more than you do.
Not just that they're know more than you do. They're making this
choice for a reason.
But that ultimately, even though you're not okay with it, you're still going to help them achieve the goal that they're largely working towards.
Right. No, I think...
And you're saving all of the people. And I think that if you can find... if you can steer your own ship towards that goal, which is playing the game, which is being a good employee, being a good team player, but also looking out for the people you know that will be affected by the decisions the authority figures are making, then I think that's the key to making it through a company like that.
Sure. And for the record, I think it's important that you said all that, but I definitely fall under that. I think if you asked anyone
well, that's great. I'm glad
if you watch
did.
anyone I think I've ever worked with, asked anyone I've ever worked with, they would say I was a picturesque employee.
That's awesome.
I mean, I don't think anyone has ever experienced what I felt in my heart when I was upset.
But that's what you take when you hear enough people say that, and I know people listening to this have heard people say that.
Say what?
That you're a good employee, or you're a good person, or you're good to have around, or like you keep us the morale up, or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Whatever it is that you individually hear that is a positive piece of feedback, you're hearing that because it's true. Like, it's hard for people to do that.
Wait, how does that relate to the conversation?
It relates to the conversation because it brings you back to your worth, right? It brings you back to, if you're the kind of person that is rebellious and yet you don't have the opportunity to steer the ship in the right direction, but you're going with the flow and you're following the ship, but also you're an asset, also you're a good employee, then you're armed with so much more than you think you were armed with.
And that's this. You could have, to make it personal, you could have said that same thing to me then, and it would have been a surprise to me.
I know, and that's why it's helpful to talk about this stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Because
people need to know
I know that you're listening to this, whoever's listening to this, and I know you feel this to some degree, that either you're upset that you're not making as much money as you should be making, or you're not able to survive, or you're worried about the future. Just understand that you are a unique person that has a unique skill, and you are the only one that has that. And whatever that is, you have to find it, work towards it, hone it, become a pro at it, and then understand that that's what's going to keep you relevant and important in a company or in a business or whatever.
I'm learning right now. Great, thank you. I think if I was to just say what maybe some people might be thinking, because certainly my younger self would have thought this, thinking about the position I was in back then, even though I do think I was a really valuable asset in those ways that I can now see that I couldn't see then, because it's funny, what you described is exactly what I think I would say I was best at. Even in high school, I had an actual title to be somebody who kept morale up.
Same.
Yeah. Oh, dang.
At Sony, I feel like it was the only way I
That was like
job.
your job. That was your big thing.
Yeah.
Your actual job, like secret under the table.
Yep.
I would say similarly to me, I'm good at that. And I'm also really good at guiding the smaller ship, if that makes sense. Like, the overall people are saying we need this. But in new media, things can really fall apart easily because there isn't a really clear person who's guiding it. I was really good at guiding the smaller ships as well. Mm. Those I'd say were my two assets. However, I really think at least for new media at the time, because everything was so new and potentially scary to a lot of people who even were working above me. What's happening?
I hear like a chirping or something.
I hear it too.
It doesn't sound organic though. It sounds like someone's making that sound.
Oh well.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
I don't remember what I was saying. At the time, I think, even though if that was an asset of mine, if I had gone to the company and said, I think this is what my assets are and I need more, or I'm leaving, if I made it like an ultimatum, I think if they didn't want to give me more, they still would have let me go. Because what was true at the time, that's probably still true in a lot of companies, is the people who were overseeing, like who were above me, weren't always there experiencing my doing that, and they did not understand potentially how much of an asset that was. It's the type of thing where once you're gone, they'll notice big time, and they'll be like, "Oh, fuck."
That's when you have to like figure out how to make that happen without you having to leave.
How to show what it would be like if you weren't there.
What it would be like.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that.
But not like not by inciting some kind of action or incident or whatever, but by bringing them data and emails and whatever. Because like I used to tell people too when they were coming into SourceFed, save every single email where someone is giving you praise.
That's so smart. Nobody told me that.
I mean, I know. I'm telling you, there's a lot of really amazing things like that really are
just sitting in your head that need to come out. You got to do a whole podcast on Steve's tips.
I can't remember who initially taught me that.
By the way, Steve's very good at business stuff.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I'm great at it, but
something you wouldn't necessarily expect from like
a wacky boy.
But Steve is really good at that stuff.
I learned a lot from my ex-wife.
And from all that you've been through. You've been through so many different angles.
And for a lot of peers and people I look up to in the industry that have taught me a lot, like Joe and Harley. And
one of the fortunate things you may have had with not being in the college mind fuck is that you weren't drilled on this is how it is. Your mind was open enough to experience. When you experienced it, you learned by yourself, and you were able to say, okay, this is how it is and this isn't, versus some of us who are kind of like fucked into one mindset.
I prefer things
when we got into it, we were like, oh, this is what this job is making me think, but I've been told that that's not right. This is what it is.
Yeah.
And then you just get really mind fucked.
I don't like it when someone's like, okay, so before we roll, let's do a read through of the script or something. I'd be like, nah, let's just roll. Let's just roll and see what happens. Yeah. But yeah, it definitely you want to make sure that if you're afraid that you coming in and asking for better treatment or more money or whatever will result in them firing you anyway, but then they'll see how badly they need you, just make sure that you
show it up front.
When you go into
such incredible advice.
When you go into that meeting where you're like, I'm demanding more things because I'm important, make sure you come in with some materials. Right. You have to prove that somehow, you know.
And it's so, I think even just hearing that and recognizing that at least at that age will just give you so much more confidence in what you're doing. Like even if you don't go and have that meeting or not yet, just recognizing that, really pulling that knowledge and taking a minute to realize what an asset you are is going to change your entire demeanor and how you feel in the job.
It's wonderful to look at. Like if you're really compiling all the emails where you got praise, it's wonderful to like step back and actually look at that and be like, you know, if it's 3, if it's 6, it's like, holy shit, this is 3 emails where someone said something really nice about me, and hopefully it helps with an outlook of your total self.